Hello, everybody. I hope you can all see the screen in front of you at the moment. I just want to say thank you all for joining the latest Eurocham webinar on energy efficiency. This is the latest in our webinar series where we aim to tackle issues relevant to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, one of those is cutting down operating costs in difficult circumstances. So for those listening, I'd first of all like to thank our Eurocham 2020 our Eurocham 2020 partners, without whose generous support these webinars would not be possible. And so just to introduce today's webinar, will follow a three-part structure and it will last around 1 hour. First, we'll look at a high level at why electricity is so expensive in Cambodia. Second, we'll discuss how corporations can cut down on their everyday electricity costs. Finally, we'll end with a live Q&A session where audience members can post their own questions. So throughout the webinar, we'll also be pointing out tips to cut down on your own personal electricity costs during this time. If you have a question at any point, you'll see on the bottom right of your chat box, you can type in a question at any time in that chat box, and we'll either try to address it during the flow of the presentation, or it will be addressed in the live Q&A session at the end. And so to address a common question that we get for every webinar as well, the slides will be available and they'll be posted, the live and full recording will be posted on the Eurocham YouTube channel. And everybody who is registered for the event today will be sent a personalized link that includes that YouTube link. Okay, so just to introduce our speakers today, and I'll turn on our camera just briefly. So hello, everybody, signing on. My own name is Tom Hesketh. I'm the Business Services Manager at Eurocham Cambodia, where my role is as part of the European Union ICI Plus grants to help organizations learn more about the Cambodian market. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Suzanne Bodach, energy expert in Cambodia. So I just wondered if you want to say a few words to introduce yourself.
Yes, welcome everyone. I'm happy to join this webinar today. Thank you so much, Tom, for inviting me. Thank you, Eurocham. And I'm an energy and green building expert working here in Cambodia since 4 years now. And I joined last year BE Corporation, which is a company providing energy services and green building services in Cambodia.
Okay, so thank you very much for joining us today, Suzanne. And so, to move on with the first part of our presentation, why is electricity so expensive in Cambodia? So as you can see here, Cambodia has some of the highest energy costs in the region, and certainly the highest related to average income. And at a high level, the reason for this is relatively straightforward. Unlike Laos, PDR, Malaysia, Brunei, and Myanmar, Cambodia has limited generation capacity. It has rapidly rising demand, and this mismatch between supply and demand means it must rely on expensive imports. So you can see some of the limits to Cambodia's domestic generation capacity in this graph here. In the darker areas, you can see Cambodia's domestic capacity, and in yellow, you can see the capacity from energy imports. The peak demand line can be seen in red, and this is the peak rainy season demand. So notably in 2019, you can see a shortfall of 159 megawatts. And this was caused by unexpectedly high demand and lower rainfall than expected in 2019. There was not enough water in the hydropower dams, and this in the end caused blackouts across the country. And this was really quite unprecedented. So in pure numbers, 2019 peak demand was 1,755 megawatts. Domestic capacity, 1,188 megawatts from 5 main sources, and also around 408 megawatts from imported sources, mostly from Vietnam and Thailand, with a small amount from Laos. So Cambodia's current domestic generation capacity comes from 3 main sources, coal, hydropower, and fuel oil, with a small but growing amount coming from, or hoped to be coming from, biomass and solar. But as mentioned previously, Cambodia has a supply and a demand problem. Cambodia's demand for electricity has been growing at a much faster rate than its economic growth, which, as you've heard from our previous webinars, is one of the fastest rates of economic growth in the world. This particular graph is from EDC projections up to 2030. And there are several promising power plants under construction and for which agreements have been signed that will increase Cambodia's domestic generation capacity. Notably, you can see large predicted increases in domestic supply through solar, through gas, through coal and hydropower moving to 2030. However, as you can also see, demand by 2030 is expected to be over 12,000 megawatts. And in fact, demand is rising so fast that Cambodia is predicted to partially rely on imports, at least for the foreseeable future. So one promising trend of this is that Cambodia's percentage of its energy mix that comes from imported sources has been decreasing, however. So you can see in 2012 it was 51%, and in 2019 it was 27%. And so although this trend is expected to continue, with Cambodia relying less on imported power, there will always be, or at least for the medium term, there will be an imported source in the power mix, which will keep electricity prices relatively high. So on that note, electricity will likely never be as high as electricity will never be as cheap as that of neighboring countries. And our source for this particular quote is from EDC Director General, from the Director General of EDC itself in 2019, who mentioned this during a press conference in August 2019, where he was addressing complaints from consumers about the high tariffs that consumers were facing. So on that, just to follow on from what we've just been discussing, if you want to know more about Cambodia's energy mix and business opportunities in the sector, we actually held a webinar in October 2019 with Comin Kamai and Energy Lab. So that's also on our YouTube channel. So if you want to learn more about those specific topics, the new power plants under construction, I'd encourage you to have a look at that. But in the context I've just discussed, where energy is expensive in Cambodia and energy is not likely to become very cheap in Cambodia anytime soon, what can you do? And so you can see the average utility bill, at least from this from Numbeo, price comparison website, is $85 for an apartment that's 85 meters squared. So what can you do as a consumer to lower your electricity bill? Well, so one of the things you can do is educate themselves, or individuals can educate themselves on what the electricity tariffs actually should be. So Prakas 0040 of January 2020 from the Ministry of Mines and Energy sets electricity tariffs for the coming year. This example, the example that you can see in the slide here, does not cover all categories of consumers, which you can find in the full Prakas, and that's in the link at the bottom of the slide. With an official, the example here does state an average tariff rate of around 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And I know many listening on this presentation, including myself, will find much higher electricity rates on their electricity bills. And so without an official receipt from EDC, tenants have very limited mechanisms to complain about the higher rates charged by landlords. For example, 25 cents per kilowatt hour, 30 cents per kilowatt hour is not uncommon. But the EAC is the official body that receives these complaints. So in knowing your tariffs, our hope is that if more tenants are aware of what they should be being charged, it could support a move away from this profit-based markup charged by landlords on their tenants. So another thing that you can do from a personal level is just know your appliances. So again, electricity is going to be expensive in Cambodia, but knowing just how much each appliance costs will help you understand where the numbers on your bill are coming from. So by far and away, the largest contributor to your electricity bill is your AC unit. So a typical AC 1150 watt AC unit that would be used to cool a living room, for example, costs you 17 cents an hour. A fridge freezer will cost you around 3 cents an hour, but of course is running at 24 hours a day. A large screen TV will cost you around 2 cents an hour. And just to compare to some of the other applications, in comparison to an active AC unit, a standing fan costs 23 times less per hour to run. So, I mean, just to put that into perspective, you could have 23 standing fans in your living room for that one inverter-based unit you've got attached to your roof. And in addition to that, one other thing is that a very small amount of your electricity bill actually comes from light bulbs. So for example, 80 watts, which is four standard bulbs that would be used to power a living room, for example, would cost you just over $0.01 per hour. However, I know Suzanne will talk about energy efficient light bulbs as well. And this is certainly not to encourage you to not worry about using energy efficient light bulbs. So to wrap this all up then, in conclusion, electricity costs will remain high in Cambodia, but there are a few things you can do at a personal level to lower your electricity bill. But what this also means that it is more important than ever for companies to find ways to lower their energy costs. And so with that, I'll pass on to Suzanne to talk to you about exactly how companies can do that. So Suzanne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for this nice introduction. And yes, I really support this quote from the EDC director. I'm also convinced that electricity won't be cheaper in the future. The other way around, we are even all around the world going away from the cheap and dirty fossil fuels, and electricity is becoming more and more expensive. So, but the good news is you can do something about it. You can look into energy efficiency, and energy efficiency is officially recognized by the International Energy Agency as the cheapest and of course also a clean fuel. Cheap means in this case also that most of energy efficiency measures are cost effective, have a low payback period, concerning also business operation and reducing the energy cost. But how do I cut down my electricity cost, my energy cost? Knowledge is the key. If you don't know where you consume, and you don't know how much you consume, and you don't know how much you spend every month, then you cannot really act on that. So that's why I highlight here that knowledge is the key. And I know many businesses, they don't properly look at their electricity bill and at their electricity cost. Maybe it's also a lack of awareness and a lack of knowledge, but what can I do about it? And of course, businesses here in Cambodia often complain, I cannot do anything, electricity is expensive, that's like that. But that's not true. I've seen a lot of wastage on electricity here. And of course, you can start with looking at your utility bill, the EDC bill, or a bit from another rural electricity enterprise that you get, and look over the years, for the month, and how much do I spend. Other approaches to look and to know where I spend electricity is to do a load management analysis, energy audit, or even install real-time monitoring, or to do a so-called thermography of your building or facility or your equipment. All these approaches in general are called energy management, because I look into the topic of energy and I want to manage it, I want to reduce, I want to optimize my operation. And let's go further to see how we can do that. First of all, I want to come up with a definition on a kind of general, what is energy management? Energy and management is this process of looking into energy consumption in your operation and trying to reduce the requirements. What is my goal? I want to achieve and maintain optimum levels of energy utilization throughout my factory or building, and I want to minimize energy costs. But I don't want that this reduction affects my operation or my internal comfort. And of course, another goal that we all want to achieve to minimize the environmental impact, because we know electricity production is related with greenhouse gas emissions, so it enhances climate change. There are international standards on energy management. One is defined by the International Organization for Standardization, ISO. Maybe you've heard about ISO. ISO standards define management issues, for example, also in the food sector, etc. And the so-called ISO 50001 is on how to manage energy, the energy management system. And the cycle, how it works, is presented here by this graph. So you have 4 steps. The step 1, plan. Step 2, do. Step 3, check. And then step 4, act. And the first step is to understand the use. The second one is to implement your measures. The third one, check, to monitor, measure, does it work what I do? And the third one, act, set up policies, involve the top management, the team, the operation, and try to install a cyclist process so that you can start again with step one. So how does it look in detail? To look deeper into energy consumption, the best way to do it is to conduct an energy audit. The so-called ASHRAE Association, it's the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Engineers, has defined several levels, level 1, 2, and 3, which means you go from a very light principal assessment based on utility towards level 3, a very detailed project assessment. Often an energy audit starts with just analyzing your 12 months utility bills. Then you can involve a professional, an auditor, that visits your site, your building, and looks deeper into the energy consuming systems. And then secondly, once you have identified saving opportunities through the audit, you go to the actions. You set targets based on your findings. You prepare also a detailed action plan and implement these measures. And then step 3 with the monitoring activity, you can really see, does this work what I'm doing? Does this replacement of this inefficient equipment by the efficient equipment save electricity? And how much does it save? How much money do I save every month? So in general, if we want to reach a better utilization of the expensive electricity, we go through these 3 steps and then we start from the beginning. I want to talk a bit more in detail about energy audit. However, I don't want to become more technical because I know the audience might be not from the energy sector. So just let's look at what is an energy audit. An energy audit is the first step towards optimizing energy consumption and to determine how, why, when, and where energy is used. So I can highlight where also electricity is wasted. I can, once I understood it through the audit, I can look into operational processes, optimizes regarding energy use, and I can then decrease my energy cost and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And upgrades following an energy audit can not only save money, but often they also improve the comfort of the building and the productivity of the workers. That we don't have to forget, we don't want to reduce energy cost, compromising our operation, compromising the comfort inside the building. Buildings can be audited or monitored at different level, at the whole building level, marked here in this slide with this red frame. Then, of course, at a building floor level or at a tenant space level. And the process is straightforward, involving 5 steps. One is a preliminary review of energy use, which can be done using the electricity bill. Second, a site assessment. Third, the evaluation of potential saving potentials. 4, looking into energy and cost analysis. That means also involving suppliers, getting quotes. How much does it cost to replace the light bulbs? How much does it cost to replace equipment or install energy monitoring system? And then also calculating the cost feasibilities with a cost-benefit analysis, for example, by analyzing the payback time of my investment. And all these findings will be summarized in an audit report.
So just on that one then, Suzanne, so a number of these have been I imagine getting an energy audit, often you would have to hire an external contractor or an expert in this space, but for the companies themselves, what can an individual company do completely independently of outside contractors to, I suppose, do their own internal energy audit?
Yeah, of course, I understand. Although I have to say maybe energy auditing must be not expensive, but you can do, of course, also a few measures yourself and look into operation. And I have summarized a few tips, especially in relation to these times now during COVID-19, where buildings are not operated at 100% capacities or factories are not operated at 100% capacities. So first of all, you can look into the building use and reorganize it. Maybe some areas of the buildings are not intensively used at the moment. So maybe there's no need to have lights switched on the whole day, or also appliances and air conditioning run the whole day. So just try to look at your spaces and optimize the space use. Yeah? And then in those areas, you can switch off lighting, also rescheduling lighting and air conditioning systems. And if you have a building management system, a so-called control system, or also EnMS called, you can reprogram the schedules there, the digital clocks, to adapt to these new operational schedules. Another important topic, adjust the set point temperature, because if your office is not fully occupied or your building is not fully occupied, often HVAC systems, especially if these are centralized systems, they are running too much and they are cooling down too much your building. Yeah? So that's also a point to look into. Okay, what is really my inside temperature? Maybe if I have a few people, if I don't operate certain meetings room, I don't need to switch it on, or can increase the set point temperatures. Yeah. In generally, I say office environment set point temperature by around 25, 26 are good. At homes, even people are comfortable with set point temperature of 28 degrees Celsius. It's also a good opportunity right now to carry out maintenance of appliances, because you don't disturb operation, you don't disturb other uses in the buildings. So look at your air conditioning systems, do cleaning of filters now. You can also do a replacement of systems. And one final comment, I'm still going around in Phnom Penh and Cambodia, and I see in big hotels fluorescent light bulbs, CFL bulbs running 24 hours, and it's just a wastage. The LED light bulbs are so accessible, also cost-wise, that now it's the time to replace them, and you will cut down your electricity costs, and payback times are often less than 1 year. But yeah, now we talked about the company level, but of course you can do also save electricity at your home. Tom already mentioned in the beginning a few topics I would like to add here. Switch off, switch off, switch off when not in use. Also, fans and air conditioning cool people, not the room. So please switch it off when there are no people in the room. There is some kind of myth going around that you should leave the air conditioning on, because then it will be more comfortable or stay cool. But what you do actually, especially in Cambodia, where buildings are not highly insulated, you cool down also the environment, not only the room itself. And if there are no people in the room, it makes really no sense. Close doors and windows when the AC is on. Try to seal also gaps in doors and windows, because there is where your nicely, expensively cooled air goes directly into the environment. Again, replace lighting by LED bulbs. Also in the residential sector, payback is often less than 1 year, depending, of course, on how much hour a light bulb is used. Set point temperatures of air conditioning systems in the residential sector are recommended between 26 and 28 degrees Celsius. And when you buy new appliances, look out for efficient models. I know it's not easy here in Cambodia because you don't have this energy efficiency labels that you see here in this slide. Yeah, maybe the most common one, the one on the left side from Thailand, you see pretty often on some equipment that are sold in the market. But I know that Ministry of Mines and Energy is working on that, and hopefully soon there will be also an energy efficiency label for appliances in Cambodian language adapted to the Cambodian market.
You know, some of those are really interesting and practical points, actually. I know I've certainly heard before of the need to turn the AC on to 18 degrees before 50 or 15 minutes beforehand to prepare it, to get it ready. And I know it itself in Eurocham events, I've sat there and been freezing, sitting under an AC unit, where really, I suppose it's not needed and it's wasteful in many circumstances.
Also on this slide, you see there some information from in Khmer language. UNDP has recently published a booklet on energy efficiency that can be freely downloaded. It's available in English and Khmer, and it gives some insights. Also, it gives energy saving tips for companies and especially for offices and for residentials. Okay, but now let's go to the smart ways to reduce energy cost. I know my friends here at Eurocham, they were very excited also see the smart solutions, and I really am convinced smart solution can also empower building and facility owners with data. And data awareness is so important to realize energy savings, as I mentioned on my first slide, knowledge. Yeah. So there are now in the market available real-time energy monitoring systems. They consist about a hardware component and a software component. To give you a little bit more understanding how this works, the hardware component is not very what we say invasive. Yeah, it's an easy installation that can be done at any distribution board or in the building level, and then this hardware component monitors or gets the data on the energy consumption of HVAC, lighting, plug loads, or others in real time. That means every 15 seconds or every 30 seconds, yeah. And then this hardware, so-called energy meter, sends this data to a software, to the cloud, to the internet, and often these softwares are cloud-based management software that then collect the data, analyzes them automatically, and shows them to the building owner. So often it's also not so expensive measure and a very easy measure to see more than only one number. Right now, you get your electricity bill at the end of the month and you see one number, yeah, that is so many units, kilowatt hours I spend, and this costs so much, and then you pay ADC. But this kind of smart solutions can show you more than one number. It can show you your electricity consumption every hour of the day, every day of the month. And then you can really look into it and you can see where exactly you are spending. So it gives you a kind of a system where you can more visualize your data. Often these software systems also allow you to customize monthly report, for example, for your management in regard to cost, etc. And so you can analyze better your energy consumption.
So I mean, on this particular topic, and I know this was a concern we spoke about beforehand, we've heard about Cambodia leapfrogging into these new technologies, but when it comes to smart energy, are these technologies available in Cambodia at the moment, or would you have to go look abroad to find somebody to install a smart monitoring solution?
No, they are available in Cambodia. We also offer such a system, but there are other players in the market. And often these softwares are also globally available. So they are also often in English languages. And it's also not a very expensive investment. So I think it's a good option as a first step to get to know more your building or operation of your factory and to look into energy use. And how this really works, I have prepared a few slides to show you a bit what such software can do. First of all, it gives you an overview of your energy consumption. On the right side, you see here a so-called pie chart, a typical pie chart of your monthly energy consumption. An example from a building, and it's divided in the different uses. Yeah, how much of your total bill is used for HVAC? Yeah, there are different HVAC 1 and 2 in this case, lighting, plug loads, the elevator. So this gives you the power also to see where do I use a lot, because of course if I use a lot in one section, there are also a lot of saving potential. If I can there save only 10%, it's quite a huge amount of money. And then on the left side, you see the chart. It's over 1 month. So on the x-axis, you see the numbers 1 to 31, and every bar here is for a typical for one use. In this case, the red ones are the HVAC systems. The green, no, sorry. Yeah, I think the red ones are the HVAC system, the green is the lighting, and the blue bar is the plug loads. Yeah. So and you already see lighting and HVAC systems are here the most energy consuming devices. Yeah. So these kind of charts can be generated by the software. Often also the software has a kind of customized options, because it depends a bit on your type of building or type of factory. You want maybe yearly, monthly, or even weekly or daily charts like this to analyze it properly. And then, of course, you can go also a bit deeper into that with looking at specific consumption. In this case, we see here a chart that tracks the so-called lighting action tracker. So each point in this chart is 1 hour of the month over the whole month. It means that the dark green dots are the hours where a lot of electricity is used, and the light green where less electricity is used. Yeah. On the x-axis, we have again the hours starting from midnight, or the morning hours, 12 o'clock noon, and then the evening hours. And on the y-axis, you have the month of the day. So what does these red marked areas mean here? These are the areas or the hours where there had been lighting use overnight. And the question is why. Maybe the office building was occupied at night. In this case, it is the office building, I know. What has been done there? So with this lighting action tracker, you can identify it also where lighting has been used. And then you can select those hours and see, okay, what happens if I don't use lighting in this? And this is presented by the right chart here. And you see that you have, because of this lighting use in the night hours, 17% more overall lighting consumption. And even if the software allows to put an electricity tariff, yeah, then you can also calculate the cost. So now, of course, you can look into why the lighting has been switched on. I think in this case it was because of cleaning operation during night hours. But of course, then the whole building was switched on, and maybe these cleaning people were only in one floor. So the question is if it's really necessary. So that means you can then adjust operation. Energy can be analyzed also more on a so-called hourly basis. This is, for example, a graph where it compares different data points across one day. This is from the 14th April, you see on the left side, and until the 15th of April, the 24 hours. So the red line shows the HVAC systems, the blue line, the facade lighting, and the green light is the facade lighting, and the blue is the interior lighting. Yeah, and you can see here that the lighting units were not properly switched off, because it's not going to zero. And of course, you can look into, okay, where lighting electricity is still used. I mean, maybe there are some lights, like emergency light, that must be switched on, but maybe also it looks in this case a bit that maybe there were somewhere still people forgot to switch it off. Similarly, with the HVAC system, you see here that the HVAC system is running 24 hours. It might be necessary if the building is operated 24 hours, like maybe a hospital. But I guess this was from an office building, and they have identified some issues with the HVAC system, that it's not shutting down properly. And doing this kind of daily analysis also lets you see where your operational issues is and how you could adjust operation to reduce electricity. So here again, we see this HVAC overuse night before and after, and visually, how does it visualize in this graph. Yeah, as mentioned before, the dark green dots are the hours of where most electricity is used. Yeah, you already see that on the left graph that during night time, which is the red marked area, there is light colored HVAC use, but still there are some darker colored. And so that analyzing this monthly chart, you see some ACs, some areas are not switched off properly. Yeah? And you can, in this case, we identify that there are 25% saving potentials, yeah, in 1 month. To save electricity for HVAC use. So after the implementation of proper policies to switching off HVAC system, we found out that this is working much better and electricity saving could be really achieved.
On this one, Suzanne, I just wanted to ask you, for this, these particular graphs, do you know which industry they're from? Just so that the listeners can maybe get an idea of what type of industry is producing this data.
This graph is based on an energy metering system, and I think this building is an office building that is operated. Why still in an office building you would use HVAC systems during night? It depends. Maybe some areas are common areas that must be cooled down during night hours. I have also heard, but this is a kind of myth again, some people operate during nighttime because they don't want the building to heat up too much. But this also, with a proper analysis, you can find out where it's really needed and where it's not needed. Okay, so even smarter way is to involve now machine learning systems, and this is a current trend also with the digitalization of the economy, Industry 4.0. Of course, machine learning has huge potentials. These so-called sentinel trends are self-learning systems. That means the software learns over time how much electricity normally your building or your facility is using on every day or every hour. This is presented by the green area here, and the line, the black line here shows your current use of electricity. So you can then set an automatic alert if your current use goes out of this green area. That means something especially happens, that suddenly maybe you consume more or less energy than usual, and by doing this it's a kind of real-time alert, and you can act immediately. So it makes it also more convenient for energy managers and building operators to find out where energy is wasted. Okay, this is a chart where we implemented such a measure. It's from a big retailer in Hong Kong, so it's store operator, and the issue was there that the HVAC systems were not properly switched off during night. So something very typical. I have heard this also here from international schools, from different building operators. It's challenging, yeah? It's just pressing a button, but often it's very challenging, these switching off systems that are not in use. And we implemented this alert system that they get alert if the HVAC is not switched out, and by doing so, they could reduce their energy consumption by 18%. Yeah, so that's enormous. So you see that energy efficiency is a continuous process, and I showed in my first slide highlighting on the international standard for energy management systems. That's a cycle process. So you need a periodic review, you need to review and evaluate the energy efficiency measures that you have implemented, and then again you can identify new opportunities for improvement and savings. Yeah. Energy monitoring can help you, especially this real-time monitoring, but you can also do energy monitoring just by analyzing your electricity bill on a monthly basis. Yeah, important is to establish periodic reviews for energy performance, evaluate those, and then set new goals we know not everything can be changed at once. Yeah, we have to go in small steps. That's what I also say after doing an energy audit. Don't pick the big projects. Pick the small first, the low cost measures. Yeah, that is about operation, or maybe the low cost and maybe even the no cost measure. Yeah, as we said, switching off is a no cost. It's just a behavior thing. It's just a management issue. Yeah. And then you will be successful, and you will ensure continuous improvement. Okay. I would like to highlight a few issues, more sustainability issues related to green buildings. Because we know that energy is one of the most important ones, but other sustainability issues are also important. One exercise we generally do to look if your building or your factory is operating efficiently, you can compare it with your peers or compare the energy performance with other similar buildings or facilities. This exercise is called benchmarking. Yeah? And benchmarking can be done by comparing your energy performance using a standard unit. What we generally use for buildings is the so-called energy use intensity. That means how much kilowatt your building consumes per 1 square meter. Green building certification systems can also be used to do that. I would like to highlight one building system that is relevant for this, the so-called LEED. I guess many of you have heard about it. LEED means Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. They have come on with one standard or certification system for existing buildings called LEED O&M, which stands for LEED for Operation and Maintenance. And you can imagine this kind of green building certification like an eco label, yeah, or a quality label. Yeah? For product that you buy, you can also get now an eco label or a quality label. It's similar for buildings, you can get such a label. And LEED has come up with an online platform called ARC that can be used also free for benchmarking exercise. Yeah, that means this ARC platform you can put in, you can register for free, put in your energy data and like kind of basic building data as well to find out how good your building is performing comparing to similar buildings in similar climates, of course. And so to understand this, ARC is a system that compares buildings. That means you can look, is my building really energy efficient or is it not compared to the peers? But ARC does not only focus on on energy, it has also a few more criteria. More criteria are water efficiency, material and resources, location, transport, and indoor environment quality. From this kind of categories, you see here that energy and atmosphere gets the most points. So it is recognized as one of the most important criteria.
So just on that one then, Suzanne, what exactly does indoor environment quality mean, and why is this important in this particular context?
Indoor environment is so important because we spend many hours of the day inside the building. About 90% of our time we spend into the building. So of course we want the building to have a healthy and comfortable indoor climate. And it's not only important in the context of your home or your residence, it's especially important also in the context of your office or your factory, because people are more productive, are working better when they feel comfortable and healthy inside the buildings. So there are a few components that are important for that. indoor environment comfort, which is one of is the air quality, of course, and you can also measure air quality inside the building. CO2 levels, for example, if the CO2 level is too high in a meeting room, people would get very tired. They cannot focus anymore. Similar in a factory, they cannot work properly. So this is why this section is important. Okay. So let's go a bit more to see some case studies. I know case studies are always very interesting for the audience, so I have picked a few out from our experience as a company working in this field, and also some experience here from Cambodia. Here is an energy audit that we did for Prada in the context of a LEED certification, a green building certification in Hong Kong. So we installed there also real-time energy monitoring. We did ASHRAE level 1 audit, and we established an operation and maintenance plan to optimize operation and reduce energy use. Beside that, also air quality was important because Prada is a big luxury retailer, you know, so they provide high quality luxury goods, and they want, of course, to have their buyers or shoppers, people going to their store, feel comfortable and having a healthy environment. Another example is from a big also retailer in Taiwan, Carrefour. It's a multinational French company, and the aim of the audit was to understand really the specific energy use pattern in one of their facilities, in one of their stores. And by doing this, the aim was then also be able to replicate success stories in all the other stores around Asia. So we conducted an energy audit, ASHRAE 2 level, a survey, and a deep analysis that brought out really the energy use down in the different sections of the building. And then we identified good improvement opportunities, and also with the cost-benefit analysis, we could show that it's really a business case, that it makes sense to invest. Okay, thanks a lot for this. For having me here. I have seen there are a lot of questions coming up,
yes,
and we will have a longer Q&A session. I will be happy to answer them. Please, Tom, yes, you are the moderator. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Suzanne, thank you very much for explaining all of those this detailed information on energy audits, and indeed, thank you very much, audience members, for these active questions. There's quite a few here. There's a lot of interesting ones, so we won't be able to get through all of them. But any that we can't address during the Q&A, if you write them under the YouTube link once it's posted, Eurochamp or Suzanne will be able to address them under the YouTube link. So the first question, though, Suzanne, and one that I thought was very interesting from Vabotra Chia and Bradley Abbott, was considering the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think business owners are still interested in investing in energy efficiency software and systems that I suppose could be considered luxury purchases that have long-term payoffs, but certainly in the short term, I imagine would be fairly expensive?
I have to say, I think maybe there is a kind of perception that energy monitoring and energy auditing is expensive. But especially when it comes to the monitoring equipment, it's not a kind of very expensive investment. And as I said, it's not invasive. So for a simple monitoring system, maybe you can spend $1,000 or $2,000, and more complicated systems where you have a lot of data points, a few more $1,000s. So it makes sense in the long run. And if you see that often companies or big building owners, they use $10,000s every month to pay their electricity bill, this amount is relatively small, and I'm convinced that there is potential.
And then just a follow-up, actually, I think from Vabotra, how can How can organizations operating in this space try to start convincing or making the argument that this is a worthwhile investment? Because I know that it will be a longer term, it will be a much more longer term process.
Yeah, of course. This long-term vision, not every business owner, investor has this long-term vision in Cambodia. But what is long-term? Long-term is probably 3 years or maybe even more than 1 year now. So I always say start with the small things that have less payback period to offer this as options and like small steps. We have seen in our experience in all over Asia that it's often also an operational issue. Yeah, so many measures are also low-cost measures, and I think there is where capacity building and knowledge sharing, more sessions like this can really help. And I know that many more organizations are doing this in Cambodia. And another topic maybe, or another issue we could touch is topic investment, because often also maybe there's no investment, there's no financing, energy efficiency financing options. And I know also some organizations are working on that to look into if banks could roll out here in Cambodia special financing options for energy efficiency investment, which would then tackle a bit this gap of taking the risk and getting also loans for such investments. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So there are a few things we can do, and also what we're hoping to do from the Eurochan perspective is hold these events just to raise awareness that this software is out there, and our own Green Business Committee advocates for energy efficiency as well in Cambodia. So just the next question, and I thought it's a good question because it's very practical, was just can you give examples of off-the-shelf metering products or off-the-shelf products that can cut down a company's electricity costs available in Cambodia now?
Off the shelf? What do you mean? It's like
I suppose readily available right now. That
metering. The question was about the metering options. Yeah. Right now, I'm not aware about off-the-shelf system here available, like that you could go to a supplier and that's also manufactured here in Cambodia. However, I mean, we are offering a turnkey solutions. We also offer our service without the energy audit. So our metering devices are also available, just including the installation and the kind of introduction to using the software.
Okay. So good, nice answer for now. So the next set of questions were both from Vichet Kem, and they're both somewhat related. So the first one was, what is the cost of electricity? And the second one, and they're kind of related, is, do you think energy savings by installing solar energy are a good idea? And so I can pitch in a little bit on this one. The cost of energy can be found on Prakas 0040 from the Ministry of Mines and Energy. And what we can do is actually send you a translated version of that Prakas to everybody who's registered today. Related to solar, and Suzanne, please add to this once I've finished, but on that Prakas actually, and an issue that Eurochan is facing in its advocacy committee, the Green Business Committee, is that it's become recently harder to justify the business case for rooftop solar, because the most recent Prakas includes peak load times and low demand times and different rates for those peak and low demand times. And if you have rooftop solar installed and you're connected to the grid, you only have access to the peak load time. You don't have access to the peak load rate. You don't have access to the low load rate, which means that it's actually more expensive to run rooftop solar at the moment, which has been quite an unfortunate development from our perspective, but it's something that the Green Business Committee is hoping to advocate towards an improvement on in the near future. But Suzanne, I welcome your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I would like to add, I'm also working in this field. So yes, you're right. I mean, the situation has become a bit more difficult, but I think in general, regarding rooftop, we are at the starting point here in Cambodia. We have seen this in other countries. My country, I'm from Germany. We have started to promote rooftop solar 30 years ago, and it took us also a while to find the right regulatory framework. So I think it's under progress, and I know many organizations also advocating for making it more fair for solar rooftop, the tariffs more fair for solar rooftops. There is a kind of bottleneck with the EDC, seeing also challenging how to adapt their business model, of course. We have seen here also working with companies that are specialized in solar rooftop, that there is a lot of opportunities also to save energy before you install solar, because this is often forgotten. That rooftop solar is very good to save energy, especially if you use the solar during the daytime, directly. But often you should first think where I can reduce, because then if you reduce your demand in general, you can also reduce the size of your solar system. And solar systems still, I mean, they are capital intensive, and energy efficiency is often still cheaper, but maybe a bit more challenging to implement.
Okay. So, interesting answer then. Okay, so we've had apologies for the pause. I've just been trying to read up on all of the questions that have come in recently. One we've had was actually from the Green Growth Institute. And they said that in their experience, they've seen companies install these management systems, but then building owners sometimes will not end up utilizing them in the long term. And the reason that they quote is due to technical issues related to configuration and maintenance. And so this is a practical experience coming from this topic. So what are your own thoughts on that? Do you think, how can a company, if they do choose to install such a system, how can they lower this burden of technical configuration and maintenance?
The challenge of the system is, of course, that you need some basic technical capacity. But if you have it cloud-based, for example, you can also get advice from experts remotely. And this is often also very cheap, much cheaper than bringing an expert to the site and looking at your building management system and looking at your graphs. That's what we have done also with our clients. That we work often with them remotely, that we can also offer services very cost effectively, I would say. And what is our experience at the first, you need to involve capacity building. So for example, for the Prada retailer, we really trained also their sustainability team on how to use those energy management solutions. And what we have seen also, which brings an advantage, is if the software can really generate customized regular reports. That means they send automatic reports on a monthly basis that are sent to a manager or energy manager or an engineer that can be understood. But these reports cannot be only general, they must be customized to the company's challenges and situation. And that's how you can really bring also information to the company that they can understand without having really a deep expertise in energy efficiency.
Okay, so some level of technical capacity is needed, but really just as long as it's installed responsibly, that technical capacity should be available, and it should be relatively easy to continue going forward. Okay, that's good. So I hope that addresses that particular question. One we've had that is quite practical for this call. Would there be any problems with installing these systems with EDC? There be any regulatory problems that would?
No, not at all, because they are also non-invasive systems. So if you're an electrical engineer, you understand there are some clamps that you put on and then you put it on your distribution board, but they are absolutely non-invasive, and you just need internet connection. Better, we have the experience. It's better to have a LAN cable, like internet cable, that you can then send the data to the cloud.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, that actually brings us to our 1 hour mark. I know that there's a few questions that we didn't get to there. Max, Veron, I know there was one from you. So for those ones, if there is a burning question that we didn't get to, please just send Eurocham an email, and we'll get to it that way. And that can be one that can be answered by Suzanne separately. Just as we end up closing, one question that I thought was, I spotted in the chat box that came up. It's almost, I suppose, a high school physics type of high school physics type of question, but I think it's important for some members of the audience here. Just simply, how can you calculate the consumption of your AC unit? These are things that everybody takes for granted, but I suppose maybe they don't take for granted. They see the AC unit, they may not understand the numbers on the label, but just, Suzanne, I wonder if you can give just the explanation to end on a very basic question, though, but how can average...
Unfortunately, it's not so easy to calculate it, because often the AC systems, they have only one number put there on the technical specification, which is the rated capacity, which also appeared on the first slide. It's about 1,150 watt, for example. That was one of these. And then this is the capacity. This is maybe the wattage or the power used at the beginning when it starts. But then when the room is already cooled down, it doesn't run at full capacity. So unfortunately, it's really not a very, very simple answer. What would bring the simple answer, and sometimes you can find this if you look up in the internet for the model, and you can find a so-called energy efficiency label for the appliance. Then normally energy efficiency labels, it doesn't matter from which country they come, they show the average consumption per year. Sometimes also in cost, but this makes it more difficult because electricity costs are different. So there you can compare at least two models with using the same label, which one is using less and more.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, on that note then, Suzanne, I'll just turn on the camera to say goodbye. And just move on to, I have to again say thank you very much to our sponsors. But overall, to all participants who've been a very active audience on this, thank you so much for joining today. We had some 60 active participants on this call today, so I really appreciate your active participation. Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tom, for giving me the opportunity to be here. Thanks a lot.
And,
it was a pleasure.
And last one, thank you to our production team for making this happen. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a good rest of your Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye.